This interview with Mike Shinoda is really special. We're actually in the recording studio where they just completed the recording of their brand new album. He shares with us his insights about the creative and recording process. It is such a pleasure to be here. What a fabulous opportunity to chat with you, and especially in this really remarkable location. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about where we are.
Yeah, well, we just finished, like this week, this past Friday, we finished mixing a couple songs for our new album. And this is the studio in North Hollywood where we mixed it. One of my favorite mixers, Andy Wallace, came over from New York. He normally works in New York, so it was really special to have him here. And we mixed 2 songs in this room on the board, and yeah, it's like fresh in my mind. So I'm really, excited to be doing it here. In about 2 hours, the other rooms, so they'll start mixing and mostly mixing in this studio, and it gets really loud. Manny Marroquin mixes in one room, and Jason Joshua mixes in another room, and between the two of them, they've got 1 or 2 songs on the Billboard Top 10 at any given time, and Jason in particular is like the loudest mixer. I mean, it just rumbles through the whole building.
Wow,
yeah.
This is quite a remarkable space. You can sort of hear the echoes of songs past as you go down the halls. So this is part of a course on creativity in music. And one of the things that we focus on when we think about creativity is inspiration. Where do the ideas come from? And as a musician, every song obviously comes from a different place. Can you talk a little bit about your inspiration for your music and maybe how it's evolved over time?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's evolved a lot. I think when we first started, it bears like taking us back to like when we were, say, like 18, 19. I came from a hip hop background, so my approach was always like loop based and like build a track and put vocals on top of it. That's very much like a at least at the time, kind of a rap oriented approach. Even these days, like when you hear a rap song, a lot of times it's somebody building a beat, and then kind of they'll often like work a hook into that, and then rappers will come in and just put verses on top of it. And sometimes they're just putting verses on top of a stereo track, not even a multi-track with where you can move around the parts. We started there, and you used to like kind of force the lyrics to be part of the song, and sometimes it didn't work. Like we were really having to work really hard to make the words or the melodies work. In fact, one time I remember on our second album, we were finished with every song except for the chorus on our first single, which was really important. And it got all the way to the point where we were like mixing the song, and we had to fly Chester out from LA to New York just so we could sit there and like we were coming up with, does this chorus work? Does this chorus work? And we went through 30-something chorus options before we found the one that we liked enough to put on the song. Shortly thereafter, we worked with Rick Rubin, and Rick kind of opened us up to a whole different way of approaching songwriting, which was a lot more traditional. A lot of the artists we talked about when we were working with Rick were kind of I think of them as being like those like legendary veteran artists and usually more in rock. It was like Tom Petty and Johnny Cash and Elton John, so on. And we would talk about how if you come up with all the parts at once, if you just kind of think of things in a more holistic fashion, then every part is like kind of leaning on the other part, and you kind of realize quickly that, oh, I've got this great music, but now I put a melody on it, and what the melody needs is that it needs for me to change this chord or change the rhythm a little bit, and it just informs each part of the process. So we integrated that, and now I think our process is a lot more like that.
So you're describing a very interesting team effort here. This is certainly not something that one person does. There's everything from the artists to then the mixers who are involved. Can you talk a little bit about the creativity in those teams? Are there times in which it works really well and times in which it's not as effective, and how do you end up tuning up the good stuff?
Well, for me, usually the guys look to me to kind of establish the tone and to get the lion's share of the album together. I'm usually the one who brings in demos if it's done that way. Occasionally we'll get together in a group and write something. But we're not really a band that gets a lot out of jamming. We've tried that a number of times, and once in a while it will work, but more often than not, I should say our best bet is to kind of write in small groups. And that usually means me and our guitarist Brad or our singer Chester.
So the songs you do are incredibly powerful.
Thank you.
They really are powerful. I've been listening to them a lot the last few days in preparation, and I wonder where that comes from. Do you start with an intellectual, a problem you want to solve and you want to address? Does it start with an emotion? Is it something as a group that you all have to buy into? I mean, talk a little bit about where the real roots of the song come from.
It's a great question because it's different for every band, right, or every artist. In our band, we have a lot of, I describe them as like more global talks, like where we'll sit, like a studio session for us doesn't necessarily mean recording music. We'll sit in the studio and listen to the music and then just like we'll be talking for like 2 hours or 3 hours, you know, about what the album is about or what the songs should be about. To give you an idea, there have been times, like a couple albums ago, we did an album called 1,000 Suns, and while we were starting it, when it began, we wanted to do something that was tied together with a theme, and that theme kept changing. And then as we wrote it, we were inspired by like Dark Side of the Moon and various other, I mean, there's like probably a dozen or 24 albums that came into the conversation at various points. But we realized that we wanted to make an album that one read could be that it's really about humanity kind of just destroying itself, but also using that as a metaphor for personal relationships, etc. So, you know, you can listen to the album and that's probably your first read. It's got like, you know, Oppenheimer, you know, quotes on the recordings on there. But and you're talking about the atomic bomb, etc. But at the same time, if you start to think about it in terms of a relationship kind of destroying itself, I think that's where the best songs get more interesting.
Well, you've brought in some really interesting idea here of bringing things from different places. This is something we talk a lot about in our class on creativity, is combining things that already exist. I mean, most ideas aren't born out of nowhere. They come from drawing on different inspirations. Do you bring different things? You talked about bringing music in. Do you bring other things in to help inspire the music?
Yeah, oftentimes if we get some art, whether it's album art, you know, made specifically for the album, if we get that early enough, that'll often be up in the studio. If not, then sometimes, you know, it might be films. Most recently, like, we've never been a band to have, a lot of the studios have a TV behind the console, and a lot of people like Rob Cavallo was just telling me the other day, and he's produced amazing records, but he often has one of the things he likes to have going on in the studio is a movie, various movies actually, on the screen, just muted. So like as he's creating, it's kind of like these cool movies that are some of his favorite movies are like influencing the vibe of the music and the lyrics and so on.
That's fascinating.
Some people, I mean, I don't think it's that much different from people who write sitting at coffee shops doing it. You know, you've got, I hear a lot of authors and screenwriters tell me that they like to work at Starbucks because they're sitting there and watching people and listening to conversations, and it just gets ideas going. And it's so, you know, it's so random, but you're just getting this neat little random sampling of real life wherever you're at.
How do you stretch beyond the first solutions? Is it just time and just continuing work on it? Do you have any tools for really challenging assumptions and coming up with new approaches?
I mean, I would encourage anybody to spend more time in the creation phase, more time in the like sculpting it and crafting the song, because for us, like the first draft of something is almost, I can't think of a time when that's made the record. We never go along with the first draft. We just know that there's almost always a better way to do it, a better way to say it, or, you know, you can always make it better.
Let's look into the future. Obviously, things are changing really quickly in terms of the way people are producing music, distributing music, consuming music, sharing music, discovering music. Do you have any thoughts about where things are going and what things are most exciting to you and what things maybe are a little worrying?
Sure. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is music video, the conversation about like music videos or like what goes with the song, because not all bands are equipped to like create the visuals that go with their music. You know, sometimes I feel like we're so lucky because we've got 2 guys out of 6 who went to art school and have very particular, very specific ideas, and because we're in the, you know, because we're in the collective and we're such a like we play driving roles. All of the guys have kind of they got more interested about it, you know, and they get more information about aesthetic and whatever. Other bands just don't have that. So I feel like sometimes it's like can be really tough for a band who's got great music but like kind of bad visuals. And hopefully those bands learn to just kind of rely on their music and their presentation of it instead of like trying to be a band that makes great videos or whatever. On the other hand, there are, you know, I feel like the music video is kind of like, it's pretty boring to me at this point. Like I want to do, at this point I want to do anything but a music video, but I think they're like necessary to a certain degree. Our YouTube channel has, I don't know how many subscribers, like 3 million. We've got like technically we should have over 2 billion views on our YouTube, on Linkin Park TV on YouTube. There was a point at which our label had a dispute with YouTube and they erased like hundreds of millions of views, which was a real bummer. So I think currently our number is at like 1 point something or other. Regardless, it's a huge number, and I know that people are watching videos there, so it's important for us to put something up there so that, you know, because YouTube is basically acting like a streaming service at this point. With that said, I intend with this new record, like, I don't want to just do videos. I want to do something that engages the fans in a different way and kind of piques their attention. Like maybe it's something interactive, maybe it's something, I don't know what it can be. We have a couple ideas, but I want them to be more than something that you just sit and watch.
This was fabulous. I have to tell you, this was incredibly inspiring. I know that all the folks in the class are going to really take some great insights and wisdom, not just about creativity in music, but also about creativity, innovation, and the entrepreneurial spirit as well.
Awesome.
Great.
Well,
thank you so much.